I want to welcome everybody back to our series that we're calling Relevant Conversations in the Current Crisis. And we're pretty excited today because we are breaking away from our typical financial topics to get to more broader topics that we had announced at the very beginning of this. And we have a little bit of a limited time schedule today. We want to try to stick to the 30 minutes as best as possible. So I want to jump right in and introduce our guest. It is Dr. John Meek with the Lexington Infectious Disease Consultants. And he has been gracious enough to push the pause button on life and on the practice there at the clinic to be able to share his time with us today. And we cannot thank him enough. Dr. Meek is a graduate of the West Virginia University. He also graduated from medical school there and did his fellowship at the University of Kentucky. So he is here in Lexington, Kentucky, and in 1990, I believe, is when you finished your fellowship. And in June of that same year is when Lexington Infectious Disease Consultants pretty much launched in business. And so we're happy to have you here with us, Dr. Meek. And we just want to say thank you so much on the very beginning of this for being so generous and sharing your time with us today. And we're glad you're here to talk to us about the medical front here as we face this Corona-19 virus here in Lexington, Kentucky. So thanks for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to talk to you all.
Well, Dr. Meek, I think we do thank you for being here, especially given the circumstances and what your role is in all of this. And we, are thinking about you guys daily on the medical front. Can you tell us just, how your daily life has changed since all of this has started?
It's changed a lot. We have a large practice, and most days we're very busy. And with just normal infections, usually nothing too crazy. When this coronavirus hit, a couple of my partners did almost nothing but deal with that and preparations, and the hospitals were emptied or half emptied in preparation for the onslaught, which is yet to come. And so ironically, my volume, patient volume, I'm about 2/3 to 1/2 as busy as I used to be. But there's now more meetings and conversations and getting up to speed with the literature on all this, and which is crazy. And and now I'm wearing scrubs, as you might be able to tell. Look like an official surgeon or doctor. Normally I dress like a normal person. And then so when I get home, I have to disrobe in the laundry room and then take a shower and put on new clothes. My wife wants me to move upstairs. My hairdresser doesn't want me around. So I'm becoming the pariah. So it's having financial implications, and I'm not as busy, and how you see the patients, the whole thing is, and it's going to change in the future soon when we have more cases, if we do. So.
Yeah. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of just a real brief review of the coronavirus. So we've got a lot of information that's coming at us from so many different sides and angles, whether that's the mass media, whether we're reading it on the internet. But why don't you, from your perspective, because you have that specialty in the infectious disease, tell us what we need to know about this virus.
Well, the whole thing is like this surreal movie from Hollywood, I've repeatedly underestimated this virus. The problem is it's a new virus. We've had a few other coronavirus outbreaks in the past, and we've known about the virus for over 50 years in general, but the first time, I deal with crazy things all the time. The first time I was a little bit scared about getting something that could kill me was with SARS, which is an earlier type of coronavirus. The person they sent to investigate SARS from the World Health Organization got SARS and died. And I thought, here's the world's expert, and he still got it and died. So I never saw, we had 2 cases here in Lexington, but that fizzled out and is gone. And there was another coronavirus called MERS, which is still having this low-grade outbreak in the Middle East for years. This virus is it's in that same family of coronavirus, and it's called that because it has a crown-like structure in the viral, the way the virus is shaped. But the problem is, it's a virus that humans had apparently never seen before. So there's no herd immunity. No one had any immunity to this particular strain. And it's about 70% genetically related to the SARS virus. So it's enough different that probably no one has any immunity. So when it gets into the community, everyone's susceptible. And so that's why it's so bad. And that's one reason the flu isn't so bad, because most people have had repeated flu vaccines or other episodes of the flu, and they have some immunity. So this SARS there's no immunity, and it's very contagious. It's more contagious than the flu, and it's more deadly than the flu. So it gets out in the community, and there's also asymptomatic spread. Someone who has no symptoms at all can spread the virus. And then it has done that. So it started in December in China, and came to the world's attention in January, and here we are in April, and it's everywhere. It's very contagious. And so that's the problem, is it's a brand new virus.
Well, and you talked briefly at the beginning just about, I think you made a comment that we haven't seen the onslaught yet. So I think that's what we're all kind of holding our breath and waiting for, especially in Lexington, as we see visions of New York and other places that are seeing the onslaught. What can you tell us about that, when that may be, or what you guys are predicting now?
Very hard to predict. I can guess. I'll tell you what my guess would be. The numbers are still going up in most places. And, at some point, you'll have enough immunity that it will level off and go away. In some areas of the world that have seen a lot of cases are now better. In China, if you believe their numbers, it's worked. Social isolation, mass, and shutting down of, public gathering, that does work. It's hard to know what's going to happen here. The governor's been very proactive, and so my guess is that I don't think we're going to get into a New York or New Orleans situation where we have just overwhelmed hospitals. I think it's going to get worse and worse over the next 2 to 4 weeks, and hospitals will see more cases. I've had very few cases. I've had 2 cases, and they're both going home today. They're better. So people get better, they go home. So I'm guessing that it'll peak next month. Probably won't be horrible in Lexington. But that's a guess, hard to say, and if they reduced all this restrictions we have, we could have other waves. And that's the main concern. One question is this virus seasonal or not? We don't know. But even if it is seasonal and it goes away some this summer, that doesn't really solve the problem, because it'll just come back this fall. So one way or another, we need to get a vaccine or a good treatment. And but my guess is it won't get horrible here in Lexington.
Well, let's piggyback on one other thing you kind of mentioned in the front, that this is a virus that yet has had a herd immunity to it. So at what point do we expect that or get that, or what do we, if we're all in isolation now and we're all having to pretty much be homebound, at what point do we develop that herd immunity where we finally get over that entirely? Or do we need to see a peak, or is flattening the curve here going to run us out for a long time, and it's going to be a while before we develop that immunity?
Yeah, so herd immunity, if we continue all this social isolation and stay at home stuff and don't work, we won't develop herd immunity because we won't be getting the cases. You have to have 70 or 80% of people who have been infected to stop most contagious diseases. So, I mean, right now we don't know what it is. We don't have enough testing, but it's in the single digits. So we don't have herd immunity, and we won't get it if we all stay isolated and without a vaccine. So that's the problem is if we don't have herd immunity, then there'll continue to be smoldering cases here and there, hospitals, nursing homes, and outbreaks. And every time there's a new outbreak or there's all those more, that area will get recontaminated. So it'll be an ongoing battle. I think that's what Dr. Fauci said the other day, is that expect isolated areas where there'll be new containments over the next 18 months. And if we have better testing, that will help a lot. If we know who actually has it or not, how many people have actually had it, then we'll have a better idea of how much at risk we all are.
Do you think we're moving to that fairly quickly? More mass testing, and then also testing to see if you've had it, if you've developed antibodies?
So the mass testing, we're supposed to be moving that way, but it's still hard to get a test done. I've checked, we've had a number of employees who had symptoms, and to get that test done, I've actually met them in the parking lot, gowned and masked up, and did the test on them because I didn't know another good way to get it done rapidly. They've all been negative. So we need mobile sites, and we need more tests, more companies to do the tests, and that should happen soon. I mean, I'm sure that'll happen soon, next few weeks. And now, as far as the blood tests go, I've heard that there's some available, but as far as I know right now, there isn't a commercially available blood test that I can order to see if you have infection or not. That we really need that too, because I've seen some people that I would have sworn they had it. One lady, her husband had it, and she had the typical findings and the X-ray findings, but I checked her twice; her tests were negative. I still think she had it, so I'm going to do. So on her, I could do the blood. If I had a blood test, I could do that and confirm it.
So run through the symptoms, things that we need to be looking out for, because everybody might have one or two symptoms and they kind of want to race to the doctor or race to the hospital because they have that, and of course that creates another problem, because I know that doctors' offices, if in the event that they have some of these cases that show up on their doorstep, and then that person proves to have had or has the virus, then they're kind of obligated to shut down for a couple of weeks. And that there's some major kind of trickle downstream effects of everybody just racing either to the doctor's office or racing to the hospitals. So what symptoms really should draw you to the attention of, where you would seek medical attention in this?
That's a very good question, because it's tricky. If you look at the breakdown of the labs and the findings and the symptoms with this virus, there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are like 30, 40, 50% of the people have cough or have, sore throat. It's like 40% in some studies. It's really indistinguishable clinically from someone with the flu. So if you think about the flu, the achiness, fever, cough, then it's the same thing with, it's about the same thing. Sometimes the sore throat's particularly bad, which is different than the flu. If you've lost your sense of taste and smell, That's particularly unusual for most things, and that would make you think of this. So if that happens. And there's some typical findings on x-rays. It's lab work that's suggestive. But if you just have a little bit of a fever and cough, how do you know? You don't know. And so I would say if you're staying at home, if you're not feeling bad, you could stay at home. But if you're working, you would want to know. I think we should err on the side of over testing. So if you have symptoms that could be coronavirus, at this time you'd want to know, because you could infect everyone around you. And if you're young and healthy, you'll probably do well. But most of us have people that are older or immunocompromised. So I would say fever, cough, sore throat, you should get checked. Another problem is a fourth of the people who presented in one study with the coronavirus were positive for something else, with the flu, actually. So you may go to the doctor's office, you check positive for the flu, and what was happening is we saw some of these people, and we said, well, we want to check for the coronavirus, and the lab said, no, you can't, because you have a reasonable explanation, and so we're not going to let you check for the coronavirus. They would refuse to run the test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and a fourth of the people with coronavirus also were positive for the flu. Now that's going to go away with the flu season's about over. So just checking positive for one thing doesn't mean you don't have two things. But it's tricky. I would say, if you're more than a little bit sick with those flu-like symptoms, you should get checked.
Now,
where should you?
Oh, go ahead, Gwen. Sorry.
I was going to say, and what's your first point of contact? Is it to go to the hospital, or is it to go to your doctor?
I would call your doctor and tell them you have these symptoms, and see what they say, and you could go through them. They don't have to see you necessarily to run the test. What we do, now what we could do with our office is do telemedicine. We can actually see you officially while you're at home over an iPad or even your cell phone, and that actually works pretty well and is now reimbursed on an emergent basis, I think by Medicare, and I don't know if it'll stay that way, but so we can actually see you and then order the test. You could go to a lab and get that done, but it's still not easy to get done. Like my employees, I wasn't sure where to send them. So I actually saw them in the parking lot behind the hospital, ran the test. But I would call your doctor's office first to get that done.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier as well, if you have two patients who have kind of overcome this and they've now been released to go home, do we know yet if there is any possibility that you end up, developing or can get this twice? Or is this just you got it once, your body has developed the antibodies that it needs to fight it, and the likelihood of you getting it a repeat time is pretty nil?
I don't think we know the answer to that question. I asked my partner that the other day. The vast majority of people almost certainly will be immune to it and not get it again, at least in the short term. Now, there have been a few people that tested negative and then tested positive later, apparently. But I think for most people, they seem to get over it and they're immune to it for now. What we do know with other coronaviruses and the flu, for that matter, is that you often lose that immunity to the flu and these other coronaviruses wanes fairly quickly, so that you may lose some of that immunity over the next 1 to 2 years. Like if you get a measles vaccine, you're probably immune for life. Immunity stays great, or tetanus or something is. But for some things like these viruses, they may wane some, You probably wouldn't get as, if you get the flu again later, you usually don't get as sick. You have some immunity, some immune memory. So yes, but so we don't know for sure, but most likely you'll stay immune and you'll be okay. And in fact, healthcare workers who had the coronavirus and have got better, they're often they want them to come back to work and see the coronavirus patients because they probably protect them.
So, Dr. Meek, going back to, you gave us a lot of, at least from your opinion, that you don't expect the onslaught here to get anything like what we've seen in other places. So that makes me at least feel good about what we're doing as a state to flatten the curve and to hopefully, not overrun the medical facilities. But there's a lot of talk even from Governor Beshear about PP&E and, whether or not and preserving it. What have we done kind of as a state or locally here to try and, maximize our use of that?
It's a battle to keep keep enough PPE. You can go through an enormous amount of protective equipment rapidly when you go and see, if you take it on and off every time you go in the room. And especially the N95 mask, the better masks. I was seeing a patient the other day, and I had left mine in the car. We're now reusing them and re-sterilizing them in some hospitals. So I left mine in the car, so I had to go get a new one. So I had to go downstairs to administration, and there's the N95 nurse who had to refit test me. She looked at me the whole time very skeptical, and I had to go through this whole rigmarole. It was a little bit weird, and so I finally got another mask to see the patient. But so I think from the personal protective standpoint, masks, I think we'll be okay. We will be breaking rules, like instead of throwing that mask away every day, we'll probably reuse, try to sterilize it with hydrogen peroxide mist, or you can heat your mask up if it's the right material. Some masks degrade with heat, some don't. And so as of right now, I've been able to get everything I need. The bad news, and I think from the ventilator standpoint, we have a good reserve. I asked somebody today about that. And so I don't think we'll run out of ventilators unless it gets really bad. So that's good news. The one thing that scares me is sedatives, things that you would take if you're on the ventilator, because being on a breathing machine is uncomfortable, to say the least. So when you go and you're hypoxic, your blood oxygen's low. So it requires a lot of sedation to tolerate that and to help people relax. And our healthcare system isn't geared up for supplying large quantities of those medications for a situation like this. And it's hard to ramp up the production enough. So that's a little scary, because if you might have enough ventilators, but not enough sedation to keep everybody on comfortably.
Are we seeing those vent patients here in Lexington? In Central Kentucky, we have of all the cases that we have seen, you have 2 patients already who you said pretty much doing pretty well and going home. Are we seeing a lot of people having to be put on the ventilator at this point here in this region?
Not a lot. Maybe probably a dozen at the most right now in the few hospitals I go to. I don't know about the university hospital. I think they have more cases in general, but I don't think they have large numbers. I don't know their numbers, but right now, no, there's not a lot of people on the ventilators.
Yeah. Well, we know we're running out a little bit of time here, and I know you're on a tight schedule. So let's shift gears just a little bit, because this is, as much as the media and kind of the onslaught of information sometimes is paralyzing. I mean, it creates anxiety and uncertainty. What's some of the things that we can be doing that we can be hopeful about, that whether we're doing this as ourselves or as a society, that kind of help us build up our own personal immunity to this as we go along? What things can we be doing just in general?
Well, in general, there's 3 or 4 things you definitely should do, which you're probably already doing. One is social isolation. So just stay at home, or if you work, work in your own office, if at all possible. If you're not around other people, you're not going to get it. And then I would wear a mask if you're out doing any shopping or whatever. I wear a mask everywhere. I was in the grocery store the other day. You have to buy groceries, I guess. I'd say over half the people in there were not wearing masks, which I was surprised. But I would wear a mask. I would stop shaking hands. I think the handshake is dead. I don't think we'll ever go back to the handshake, but that's my prediction. So stay at home. The other obvious thing is be as healthy as possible. And my wife's a functional medicine doctor, and she's on me all the time because I'm overweight. I have comorbidities. But I would eat very healthy food, exercise. If you really wanted to do it right, I would do a low glycemic diet. Intermittent fasting is probably really good for you to lower your blood sugar and your hemoglobin A1C. That seems to be a marker of progression, is how high your average blood sugars are. And so some people say don't eat between supper and lunch the next day. So you have like 18 hours of fasting. And that resets your systems and really helps a lot. So healthy eating, weight loss, exercise. Now, if you wanted to get a little bit off the reservation on supplements, if there's one that I would take is vitamin C. If you look at what the Chinese literature says to do, who have the most experience, they treated all their patients with vitamin C. They use intravenous vitamin C. And
so using pretty high doses?
Yeah, they use high doses. My wife put me on 2 grams twice a day. And they come in these little chewable tablets, and they're actually quite good. So I would, if I would do anything, I'd do that. There's other things you can try, zinc and vitamin D and vitamin A. You just can't. So I think if I would do one thing, I'd do the vitamin C and healthy living.
Yeah, and understand the coronavirus and how it works. Once it gets in the body, whether that's in the lung tissue, whether it's in the gut, whether it's it attacks the heart, that really what it's doing is it's causing inflammation. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so some of the things that we could naturally do that would cut down on just normal inflammation, I guess, would be very helpful. And I guess when you mentioned vitamin C, that's kind of a natural anti-inflammatory vitamin, correct?
Yeah, vitamin C. I also take curcumin, which reduces inflammation. I take some vitamin D. I'm on these heart supplements. I have a mild heart problem, so I mix it all together in this one big chocolate shake with the banana every morning or an apple. And you taste all the bad things, and spinach. Yep. So
really nutrient dense foods.
Yeah, little magnesium. So yeah, but the vitamin C, maybe vitamin D, and curcumin if you want to do that. They come in tablets. That's an anti-inflammatory that might help. No one really knows about any of that stuff, so I mean, it's hard to say.
Well, I think interestingly enough, you just said just stay healthy. And when we're really trying to look at the positive side of any certainly a pandemic like this that we've had to really face the onslaught of a lot of the negative side, whether that's economic, whether that's health, whether that's having to be socially distant right now when a lot of us thrive on personal connection. If nothing else, there's some takeaways from this whole thing that might drive us into some better norms maybe going into the future. You said you thought the handshake was probably gone, but what may be here to stay is just this overall general push as a nation to get healthier, to eat more, low on the lower glycemic scale, to get off the sugars, to get off the soda, to get out there and get walking and healthy. And so if nothing else, maybe we're pushing the envelope to where we'll come out of this, a much healthier nation as we understand the things that impact our own immunity. And so that's pretty not only beneficial, but it's comforting to know that we can get out on the other side of this thing and be healthier for it.
Yes.
We'll just adopt those habits. So is there anything else that we know you have another call that's coming up, but anything else that you'd like to bring to our attention? I know the information that you've shared with us is really good, and we've had some questions that we've kind of already posed to you to answer. We appreciate you doing that for us, and we certainly appreciate you coming on. But is there anything else that we haven't covered yet you just think is really important before we go?
I'll mention one last thing that I've seen in me, and this social isolation takes an emotional toll. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it in my family members. And so some of them, I reach out to them on a daily basis. My brother lives in Idaho, and there was an earthquake in Idaho last week, I think. So he ran out of his house, and so did his neighbors run out. They all ran out together. It's the first time he talked to somebody in a week. We met his neighbor on the street because of the earthquake. So I call him every day now.
Yeah.
So I would, if you're in a good situation, everyone else, there's people that that aren't. So I would take the initiative and reach out to other people.
Well, I think that's key, and that's a good takeaway to kind of end on. Certainly when we face things like this, it causes us to take a step back and to evaluate what's most important. And when you have the absence of connection, definitely understanding the importance of just the human connection and paying attention more to other people's needs. And so we appreciate that. It's a good lesson to end on. We appreciate your time. I guarantee we're going to have so much interest just from the fact that we've covered this with you. We appreciate that you guys are on the front lines fighting this battle for us. We want to take our hats off and commend you for that. We appreciate the fact that you're willing to put yourself in harm's way to treat people. And we know there's a lot of people in your office that we should be thinking too. So we would appreciate it if you'd pass that along to them as well. And for all those that are on the healthcare front, just a tremendous amount of sacrifice and hours that they're having to put in right now that everyone should take note of. And I think most people are, but we definitely don't want to forget them in this as well. So they do such an incredibly important job. So we thank you so much. We appreciate it. Anything else, Gwen, that you want to add?
No, just really appreciate you, Dr. Meek, and taking the time to talk to us, and great information. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Dr. Meek. We hope we can catch up with you later. Have a good rest of the day, everybody. Thank you for attending.